never forget wanting to pursue being a broadcaster. My minor in college was communications, major was psychology. And then finally, just an opportunity presented itself.
A1. Yeah, truly. Cooler and I'm flyer too. Damn. Cooler and I'm flyer too.
A1 family, what's good? Welcome back to your show that's cool and fly too. A1 Forever Sports. Chris Tipmore here, back with another segment, interview segment, special guest today, my first female guest, and I'm delighted to have her, Miss Tenitra Batiste of ATL Day Ones. I think she's about ready to step on in, so let's bring her in right now. All right, my guest today, like I said, first female guest. I'm very proud of this. ATL Day One's Miss Tenitra Batiste herself. How you doing, ma'am?
Good, Chris. How's it going this morning?
Every day is a good day. No complaints. Just keep it moving.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So I have to ask, who is Miss Tenitra Batiste?
Wow, that's a great question. My nephews this morning would say they're second mom because they're visiting from Louisiana. They're on a Mardi Gras and winter break. So they would say,
Ooh.
Yeah, they say mom / auntie extraordinaire. My mother would say her eldest daughter. Depends on who you talk to, right? But from a professional perspective, sportscaster. And that can encompass anything. It can encompass being the sideline TV reporter for the Skyhawks, the former in-game analyst for the Hawks, college football color commentary for ESPN, 92.9 The Game, anchor and host, and sometimes reporter. So it just depends on, honestly, and of course, ATL Day One's podcast host for the Locked On Sports Network, which is a national podcast network. So it just depends on the time of the day and the day that you're checking in with me, different things on different days at different times.
Man, well, y'all hear it. Y'all hear it right here first. She's working on that Hall of Fame speech already. I'm trying to tell you. Lady of many hats, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you get your start in the industry?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because many years ago, when I was first introduced or interested, let me say it that way, interested in this particular career, honestly, Chris, I didn't see women and definitely didn't see women of color as sportscasters. So I just kind of took the safe route and went to corporate America and was an HR leader for many years and just didn't like it. It just didn't fit. It did not fit at all. So I could never forget wanting to pursue being a broadcaster. My minor in college was communications, major was psychology. And then finally, just an opportunity presented itself. Went to a crash course in sportscasting because I didn't want to go to school, back to school for a third time. And then just started interning when 92.9 The Game actually was flipped from, I think it's like an urban or top 40 adult contemporary station, whatever it was at the time.
Like Radio
flipped,
1 or something like that?
Exactly. Whatever it was at the time, it flipped to sports. And about a year after it started, they finally took on interns, non-paid interns. So hopefully some of your listeners who are just getting in the business understand that sometimes it's paid, sometimes it's not. And then started off as that intern who was just doing whatever I was told, and then moved into producing and kind of onto talent. So yeah, it was just one of those things where I couldn't let the dream die, couldn't let the dream go, and finally had a shot and said, yeah, I can't do this corporate thing anymore. And hey, if you're doing corporate America, do you. If you're doing human resources and executive leadership training and development, mergers, acquisitions, do you. It's just not for your girl.
Hey, man, I definitely respect that, man. You got to go for your dreams. You got to go for what, moves you and your passion. That's another reason why I'm here right now. So you tell me, what has been the most difficult part of your career so far?
Yeah, that's a very great question. And to be honest with you, there's still challenges. If you are, as many times as we maybe see women of color and women in great spaces and great places, and a lot of people, the first thing you say when you hear female broadcaster of color is Maria Taylor, because she's in one of the highly visible positions, which is fantastic. She is doing an amazing job, but there are still a lot of hurdles that we have to overcome. And she could tell you one of them that we all know so famously with her, we'll call it an interaction on the sidelines with Nick Saban some years ago. And then some of the challenges that she faced that ultimately led to her exit from ESPN and onto NBC. So there are oftentimes bigger and better things once you overcome some obstacles, but I still have challenges where I'll go into a space, and if I'm with my colleague, for example, and it's a male, they'll start talking to him about sports before they start talking to me. They'll assume I'm the producer. They'll assume I am the production coordinator. They'll assume that I am his assistant. And until I start talking.
Disrespect.
Yeah. So there's still a lot of that that goes on. And then sometimes just moving into spaces and places because the industry is so small. There are thousands of people for one job. And so that constant competition, but being competitive and trying to uplift your fellow sportscasters, especially female sportscasters, that can be a challenge sometimes, but you have to stay positive and just know that what's for them is for them and what's for you is for you. But yeah, those are pretty much my two biggest challenges. Sometimes walking into the room and having to earn my respect over and over again.
Right.
And
constantly
also
having to introduce yourself.
Yes, that's a great way to say it. And then the competition sometimes can get pretty daunting when it comes to, hey, we've got thousands of people, thousands of females for one gig. And how do you navigate getting that gig?
Right.
While at the same time supporting those who are going after the same.
All right. You mentioned Miss Taylor, but can you name 3 different women in sports that you follow, not named Tenitra Batiste?
Can I say Pam Oliver 3 times? Is that okay?
That's kind of cheating.
But no. I love, so Pam's my number one. I actually just had a chance to see her a week ago and hadn't seen her in a couple of years, but we chat via phone and text pretty frequently. So she's definitely been one for me. And if I can call out my girl, Tiffany Green, she's probably my 1B in that scenario. She actually was pivotal in me getting my first television gig. And so, So, and she has been a staunch supporter since day one. So anytime an opportunity comes up and someone's looking for someone, she'll also always say, hey, did you call Tenitra Batiste? So she is the epitome of, I already know that what God has for me is for me. I'm all about raising that next person. So she's always going to take that call if I want insight. She's always throwing my name out there in the ring. And I love that. And I know you said females, but I just want to give one example of a male, if that's okay.
No, that's fine.
Because when we get those males who give us our flowers and who give us the utmost support, we should call them out. So you've got guys that I would call in kind of that number 3 spot, if you will. And no offense to, my females, because Rashawn Ali, while she no longer does a lot in the space of sports, that's another day one supporter that I got to shout out. But we wouldn't be here, Chris, if there weren't for guys standing up and letting people know. Jarvis Davis, my co-host on the podcast, Sean Thompson, my former program director, Harry Douglas, Hugh Douglas, Randy Mack, guys who play this game at the highest level, who, when I'm getting ready to call a game, they're going to sit down and have that conference call with me. We're going to go through plays and we're going to go through schemes and we're going to talk ball. Those are the types of individuals who I follow and watch the trajectory of what they're doing and who have supported me from day one and say, you got this.
Hey, and that's great. That support is important. I'm telling you, it really is important. So tell me, what are you most proud of?
Perseverance. This industry makes corporate America look like a walk in the park. And I can say that having had to do mergers and acquisitions, having to walk into a room with a president and CEO and say, no, you can't do that. And here's why. Here's how we need to do it. And here's why. And having to influence them and convince them to go about a merger, an acquisition, a restructure the way that I envision. And thank goodness it always worked out, because you don't want to go up against the CEO or president and fail, or walking into a room in corporate America and telling someone, hey, I know you got 4 kids, but you drank on my job. So here's the game plan that we're going to have to do to transition you out of here. Or telling someone, hey, don't shoot up the building today. We got to let you go, but I got security here. So probably would be a good idea to shoot up the building today.
Right.
As difficult as those 3 scenarios were, sportscasting is that much tougher, 10 times tougher, because it is such a cutthroat business. And as you see people ascending, again, think back to the fact that I said there are a few jobs and 1,000 people trying to go for a few jobs. And as you see people ascending, because think about it, Chris, if you're working in corporate America, you don't always see all 10,000 people who are taking over or taking on the kind of job you wanted, because they're not visible.
Right.
This is different. I can see someone on a TV screen, I can hear someone on the radio, or I can see someone on a podcast and say, oh, dang, that's the gig I wanted. So you see every day when you take an L, and sometimes it can be like, dang, am I ever going to kind of ascend to that next level or what I'm going after? But my mentor, who is also an amazing support system, and even friends outside of sports on the news side, one of my girlfriends, Tina Martin McDuffie, comes to mind out of Boston, and Kareem White with ESPN. They always say the person that you see on air is not the best person necessarily for that job. It's the person who persevered to get it. And so they've always just told me never give up, because that next gig really is within reach. You may not see it, you may not know it, but if you persevere, you get it, you get there. So yeah, that's been the toughest part, just waking up every morning and going, yep, we're gonna try this again.
Yeah, just keep going, keep moving, keep pressing play, keep pressing play. Yeah, I definitely understand that. So I didn't have this question lined up for you, but with recent developments, how do you feel about Coach Nate?
I was ready. I knew it was coming. I've been talking about this ad nauseum since 5:05 yesterday when the press release dropped.
Yeah, when it dropped. Yeah.
So the first reaction was shock because of timing, because every indication that I'd received from asking questions of insiders and the like was, hey, it's probably going to be the end of the season where it's a mutual parting of ways. The word was that a month or two ago, he was kind of ready to call it quits.
Right. I remember
like it's
all
a wrap.
that.
Right. And so the word was that the organization had decided, hey, we'd like to ask Coach to stay on just to get us through the year. But I suspect that after.
Same.
Yeah. So I think we were all on the same page with our understanding of how this was going to end. Challenge is when you play back-to-back games, one against the bottom dweller of the Eastern Conference, the number 15 team in the conference, and you get blown out. And then your nemesis, who you always show up for and show out against, and could have taken a 3-1 season series lead on, you get blown out of your own building. It was 20-6, Chris. And we weren't even a third of the way through the first quarter against the Knicks. 266 points against you in 2 games. I think that was just a little too much to overcome. And I think the front office just said, hey, while the timing isn't perfect, we have to do something. Do I like it? Heck no. Do I think it's going to work? I don't know that it will, because I think that there are structural issues and challenges that can't be fixed by an interim coach in 23 games. But what I suspect is they're hoping, ironically, for the same run that they went on when Nate was given the interim tag, 27-11, and they're hoping that maybe they can get something like that will either keep them in the playoff play-in contention, because they're still in they're in the 9th spot now going into this last 23 games, or they can miraculously sneak into the top 6, which that wouldn't necessarily be a Hawks thing. That might just be a debacle that's happening with other teams, with the Sixers getting injured and with the Heat going up and down, and even with the Knicks still being somewhat within reach. But yeah, I had to kind of go through those progressions, because that's it was almost like a 12-step process. And I might be in step 3 right now, just trying to understand the rationale, the timing, because again, we knew this was coming, but we thought this was going to be, I thought this was going to be a mutual parting of the ways, where they have an opportunity to bet the likes of Quinn Snyder, or wait for it, Ime Udoka, or some other coach in the league who at the end of the season, he and that team decided to part ways, and that coach might be a better fit for the Hawks. But hey, we will see. Sometimes, like they saw when Nate took over as an interim a couple seasons back, you can catch fire, a new voice can get people motivated, and maybe come Friday when they take on the Cavs or back home, they take on the Cavs, which is going to be a very pivotal Eastern Conference matchup.
Big
Maybe
matchup.
it will, exactly. So maybe we'll see a switch that won't just be one game, but maybe that sample size we saw in the 5-game winning streak, the only really long winning streak of the season, maybe they will reset and come back and do something like that.
Right. Well, you already know the only way to save your hand is to cut a finger off that's already dying. So the thing about it, I definitely have your similar thoughts about what they're hoping for. And sometimes, a different voice can be like a breath of fresh air, almost just like, getting out of a bad relationship, so
The
we'll
challenge
see
is,
what
Chris,
happens.
the
You said-
challenge is you got one finger cut off, but that wasn't even close to just the problem.
No,
the
and
biggest
that's
challenge.
and-
And so that's why I'm a little bit, when Nate took over, that made perfect sense, because if we think about it, at that time, 17 years of coaching experience, he came in as a special senior consultant to Lloyd, and every one of us looked and said, so Lloyd, you just hired your
I
replacement?
already knew. I
Going
seen
to
the writing on the
replace-
wall when I seen
Right.
Nate.
Right. So that was a different feeling that I think we all had, because we knew, like you said, writing on the wall when Nate McMillan took over. But this just still feels different, because if I'm being honest, before the announcement of the firing and after that debacle against the Knicks, I said, this just still feels different. It doesn't feel the way it felt when I felt like, okay, Nate's going to come in and he's going to right the ship.
correct.
I don't know that I feel that, because I feel like there are way more deep-seated kind of underlying issues that I just don't know that you can fix until the offseason.
Correct. And I feel exactly the same. I mean, I know you mentioned a few coaches before, Snyder, possibly Udoka. I've even seen a Steve Nash sighting, but so we'll see what happens moving forward. And man, hopefully these Hawks can turn something around, because I hate to play in, but I don't want to not be in the play in, and at the same time. So we'll see what the Hawks presents, but this was very sudden but necessary. Necessary.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for joining me, gracing my platform, and
Thank
just
you.
giving some insight on your sports mind.
Appreciate the time. And listen, anytime you want to chime in and talk about Falcons or anything, all things sports Atlanta, and really all across, because I cover the entire nation, that'd be great. But yeah, this is one of those things where, could have talked Brave spring training, we could have talked Falcons free agency now that window's opened up, but let's just keep it real. All eyes, all ears, all minds in Atlanta Metro and even around the association this morning are all on the Hawks. So good
Right.
talking to you about that.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you so much, man. And until next time, be generational, because it's always time to be. Why settle for less when you can have more with the vision? The show that's cool and fly too. A1 Forever Sports. Chris Tipmore here. Miss Tenitra Batiste. Man, peace and blessings to you guys. And I'll holler.
A1. Yeah, truly. Cooler and I'm flyer too. Jam. Cooler